Welcome to Sprinkle with Hope podcast. Your host, Shane. And today we're going to be talking about fear. Right off the bat, Jason and I love to quote. So I'm going to hit you with a quote by Mike Cooley, who was an American songwriter. And he says, "Living in fear is just another way of dying before your time." And I thought that was really profound. Like, if we have fear that's driving us to not do certain things, then we could truly be dying before our time, not literally dying, but I think in some ways that's worse because we're not really living our lives. We love to quote. And so I wanted to start with that. We talked about fear very early on in the podcast, and we wanted to circle back and talk about it again, just because it's so important. And what we're going to be talking about isn't, it's the fear of what's holding you back from following your dreams. That's really what we're going to be talking about. So not eliminating that fear, but working through it is important to think about. So as we talk about it today, just remember, we're not asking you to eliminate your fear. We're asking you to work through it, and you'll find that you can do much more things in life than you think possible.
The dictionary states that fear is a distressing emotion aroused by impending danger, evil, pain, etc. Whether the threat is real or imagined, the feeling or condition of being afraid. And I wanted to start with that because I always like to define what it is we're talking about. And so that really is the definition of fear. So, fear is a learned response. I want you guys to kind of think about this. I know Shane and I have mentioned it before, but think back to when you were a kid, right? Were you really afraid to touch that hot stove? No, you weren't. You just went ahead and touched it, and nobody told you that, right? And you weren't afraid to touch it. You were just going. You were curious, right? In your youth, and so fear really is a learned response. You learn that from your parents or whoever it was, older siblings, whatever it is that said, do not touch that stove because you're going to burn your hand. Um, the same would be true with swimming with sharks when you were younger, right? Like we wouldn't just you really probably wouldn't be afraid to swim with a shark. You'd just jump in the pool. And Shane and I love to swim, and so I thought that was a really cool analogy. Is that you're not afraid to swim with a shark when you're a young kid. You just want to jump in the pool, and you might think that it's a big fish or a cool fish, and so you're not afraid. So fear really is a learned response. 60% of adults today say they know they have at least one unreasonable fear of something. And I really found that pretty interesting because that it's the unreasonable, right? Like we may have fears of things that actually could be dangerous, right? We might have fear that our house would burn down, but why are we concerned about that right now if there's not really an impending danger, right? Or the unreasonable one would be like something you're afraid of that you know is not going to happen, right? Like I'm afraid that I might get in an airplane accident. Well, I'm not flying in an airplane today. So why is that? That's not really a fear that I should be concerned with today. So that's kind of what I wanted to start with is thinking about those unreasonable fears that we have and we hold in our mind and how to get rid of those or like Shane was kind of saying, move through those or use those fears to kind of catapult us through life.
So we're doing this together today. So this is a we haven't done this very often, but we just wanted to do it this way this time. So I also believe that fear is useful for us, and what I mean by that is, let's go back to the analogy of the shark in the ocean. If we see a shark fin, our fear of getting eaten or bitten by a shark is going to it's going to make us swim the other way, right? So that it's keep that fear of the shark is keeping us out of that dangerous water. So it's good for us. It's vital that it keeps us um, physically and sometimes emotionally out of that danger that we could go into. So it's not all bad. And again, we're going to learn how to work through it, not eliminate it. Um, if we didn't feel fear, it wouldn't protect us from dangers. Like, let's say Jason and I are walking along a canyon path, and we get to a point where the mountain is like 1,000-foot drop on both sides, and we have a foot to walk. Well, the fear of falling might prevent us from taking another step forward. We might decide, you know what, we're going to go backwards. So, it in some cases it is good, but I think often allow we allow fear to hold us back from following our dreams. I'm not sure it's the fear that stops us as much as it is the decision to allow fear to not let us take the step forward. For example, we have a podcast, and we're coming up very quickly on a year. It's amazing to me. We could have in this journey quit anytime we wanted, but we didn't let the fear of thinking that people might not listen to us, or any fear that we might have had, we haven't stopped. And so I'm also asking you to do the same thing. As you analyze your life, 60% of people have some fear. So it's likely that we all have something. We have to learn to manage that. We just do. And so we're going to talk about some ways that we can manage that.
So, as we talk about fear, I wanted to kind of bring this up because I know some people suffer with anxiety. And so, is there a difference between fear and anxiety? And the answer to that is yes. But here's the interesting fact is most psychologists today have evidence proving that a constant barrage of fear over time leads to anxiety. So that's where a lot of the anxiety comes from, is this fear of different things that might be in your life, and they could be real or imagined. um, and so uh, I want you to kind of think about that too. Like, yes, there is a difference, but typically anxiety comes from, this constant thing of fear that's always coming up in your life. And so that fear response is the fight, flight, or freeze. Shane has mentioned it before. I've mentioned it. We've talked about it a lot. It's been around since the beginning of time. It's really what keeps people safe, right? It helps us when impending danger is near. Whether, our way long ago ancestors, they had to worry about different animals, right? Because they slept outside, probably in different huts or things like that. And so they probably were getting attacked and things. And so they had to have that fight, flight, or freeze. So they needed to either fend off that animal, kill it, whatever it be. And so, but today we still have those same things. We just don't have the same dangers, right? We don't have coyotes and mountain lions coming into our house trying to take us out and eat us. And so we just don't have some of those same things that we had back then. So fear is made up in our mind. I want to talk about that. Shane and I have mentioned it before, and it's totally different than real danger. I kind of think that Shane mentioned that a little bit. There's danger, right? Falling off a cliff or whatever it be. And so that's there's a difference between what fear is and what real danger is. So there is an acronym that was created, but for fear, and it's false evidence appearing real. And I want you to think about that, because really, fear is this made up thing that we put in our mind that we're afraid of something. And so I want you to kind of think about that. Um, I have a couple of examples. One of those is, if I stand up in front of a crowd, are you instantly going to die? No. The answer to that is no. So I think about it, look at it, take a baby step towards something to control that fear. Take a small step. So if it is that you're afraid to get up and talk in front of people, maybe start by saying hi to somebody on the street that you don't know, a complete stranger. And then After you've done that, maybe introduce yourself to a group of people, work your way up. Don't just, jump in and start, uh, you know, being in front of a crowd of 300 if you're completely afraid of that. Start to control your fear and take those little baby steps towards controlling it.
I like that you talked about that, talking in front of a crowd, because I honestly believe that people who do this for a living, they still have a point in their journey where they, as they're going to get on stage or they're taking their step on stage and grab the mic, that there is a part of them that still has that little fear. But they've just learned, you know what, I'm going to just do this because this is what I like to do. And that's what we're talking about. One thing I think we can do to help overcome our fear is to learn about it. Now, think about if you're meeting somebody new for the first time, you're going to get to know their name. You're going to get to know their likes, their interests, what they want in life. But often with fear, we don't treat it that way. We don't treat it as something that we learn. We just say, "Oh, I have this fear of something," talking in front of a big crowd, but I don't really know why. And I think if we understand why we have that fear, it'll allow us to get on stage, grab the mic, and own the stage. Still having a little bit of fear in our body, but we can just push through that. So that's one way that I think we can do is learn about it and then treat it kind of like you would a new acquaintance, where you just learn about it and you learn what things um, make it grow or surface, and then you'll be able to manage those better. We're going to always talk about positive things, so use your imagination in a positive way. Instead of letting your fear walk you down a dark, dreary path, change the way that you think about it. For example, imagine that you're in a situation which normally would cause you fear, like talking in front of a crowd. Close your eyes, think about being in front of the crowd, in front of a crowded area peacefully, instead of, oh, I have all this anxiety and nervousness. Just close your eyes and think about it differently, that you're on the stage, you're ready to take the mic, and but it's peaceful and everything's calm. Now imagine that you've just taken the mic and you're presenting your strong, powerful message to your audience, and they're enjoying it. So see, you're just using your mind as a different way to push through that fear. The thing is when you get on stage the next time, what's going to happen is you're going to remember that imagination that you just had, and it's going to play out exactly how you wanted it to. You're going to grab the mic, you're going to own the stage, and you're going to be a powerful speaker. So use your imagination and your mind to you and your benefit. One other thing that we talk about a lot is breathing. And I'm truly learning how to breathe a lot better. As I lay down at night, I really do take a few deep breaths, hold them. That's something that helps me to sleep a little bit better. But focus on your breathing. If you're in that situation where you're on stage and you feel fear is coming, just take a deep breath, because it's going to ground you. It's going to allow you to present your message in a beautiful way. So it's okay to take second, focus on your breathing so that you're there in the moment. And then you'll be okay.
I love breath work. I think it's amazing. It really does help us. So, and I'll definitely be bringing that up just a little bit later. But one of the things I wanted to go over is some of us could go from 0 to 100 pretty easily and not feel too out of our comfort zone. Others that maybe struggle with some anxieties and different fears and things, going from 0 to 1 may feel like me going from 0 to 100, right? So you can't take yourself from 0 to 100 if that's not in your cards. It might feel like you're going my 0 to 100 to you could feel like a 0 to 1,000 or even a million. right? And so you have to take those smaller steps to controlling your fear. You know, many, many years ago, I was afraid to get up in front of different crowds and things like that. But I have been in front of pretty decent sized crowds, and now those fears just don't present themselves anymore because I've found that different things, kind of like what Shane was talking about, and using your imagination and looking at the crowd, like instead of them looking at you judging you, maybe they're looking at you and thinking, wow, he's amazing, he can control that fear really well, and he looks like he's standing up there and owning that. So think about it in a different, that positive way instead of the negative way. Um, it, so what if the unknown thing is exactly what we must do to feel accomplished and feel successful? It's the unknown thing, right? That you're afraid of. It's not knowing exactly how it's going to turn out. But what if that thing, that unknown thing is exactly what you need? What if the thing you are afraid of is just beyond your limitations that you placed upon yourself? So you place that limitation upon you, and getting past that unknown thing could open up a whole new world of possibilities. Think about that. What if just beyond that is like the thing you've been wanting for your whole life, but you haven't been able to push through that and get on the other side of that thing to find what it is that you really, really want. I'm going to give you an example. I've shared this before, and I'm going to share it again. So, my whole life, I was afraid of this particular water slide at a local water park, which I was at this last weekend. And so the ride is called Free Fall, and it is exactly that. You go barreling down a water slide at a fairly high rate of speed. And so I was always afraid to go down this particular ride because it was the unknown, right? Was I going to fall off the slide and die? Was I going to, my heart just going to stop right in the middle and I'm just laying in the water gonzo, or what, like what, it was that unknown, right? And so I was with Shane, and Shane had talked me into it last year. And so, yeah, I went to the top with him, and I was a little bit hesitant. In fact, I was standing at the top of the ride, and I said, okay, to the person in front of me, because I think Shane had already gone down. I said, if you go, I'll go. And so the person in front of me went down the slide, and they were afraid as well. And I went, oh man, now that they went down, I have to do it, right? Like, because I told them I would do it if they did it. And so kind of using them a little bit kind of helped me to push through this. And so, yeah, I laid down, and I pushed off, and I was a little terrified. In fact, I closed my eyes because I was a little afraid. Come to find out that now it's my favorite ride at this park. It is the thing that I absolutely love. And so it's kind of going back to my question, and is it's that unknown thing, to push through that unknown and find what it is on the other side. I found my favorite water slide ever. And so I want you guys to kind of think about that. Is there a fear that's holding you back from maybe getting to something that you really love and really, really enjoy, but it's not going to cause you real danger or harm?
Yeah, going back to this water park, Jason and I go here quite a bit actually, and often we're together with our families. And I just felt like I should share this because I helped Jason initially push through his fear. The thing is we almost every time that I can think of that we go, there's somebody that's sitting in front of this water slide, afraid, and we help them overcome it. And it gives us a lot of joy and happiness to see them push through their fear because it's not going to hurt them. But it's so fun to see people who think, I can never go on this. I'm not going to go on this thing. And you're asking me to go face first. Yeah, that's the greatest. That's it's such a great feeling. And so it's just fun to see people push through fear. So I also thought it was interesting that Jason brought up it is the fear of the unknown. And I believe that. But just in the same analogy of the water park and the water slide, he now knows that it's not going to do anything for him. It's his favorite ride because he gained knowledge. And that's what happens with fear. It doesn't go away. We still get a little bit nervous when we get up there or get on the stage, but we just push right through it because of our knowledge that nothing's going to happen. We're not going to get to the water slide the next time and it's just suddenly going to break and fall and we crash and burn. That's not going to happen. But it's the knowledge that we've gained that's helped us push through that fear. So I found a book that's called Fear is Not an Option by Monica Berg. And she says, if we live a risk averse existence because of fear, we also live a joy averse existence. And I believe that honestly. If we're living so that no, we don't, we fear hits us and we just run away so we don't push through it, we're not really having the joy that we can. Exact same analogy with Jason and the water slide. It's his favorite ride now. But let's say he decided that day to not go on it. Think about all the joy that you're missing by not going on this thing. So I strongly believe that. Um, is it the fear of failure that we have that sometimes holds us back, or is it the fear that we of what other people think of us? And I think often it's the fear of what we think other people think of us. Let's go to the analogy that Jason and I are on the stage and we're going to give this awesome presentation. But we start to fear that the crowd of 30,000 people is like going to mock us, going to make fun of us. They don't like our clothing. So all those fears bottle us up and we say, oh, actually, no, we're not going to do it now. But do they really feel that? And if they really do, does it really matter? It really doesn't. If we have a great message that we're going to share, does it really matter if people are going to judge us? I don't think so. It's we just have to learn to push through those. So I think it goes to understanding it, learning about it. It's gaining that knowledge that the fear that you have of whatever it is not going to hurt you. Ariana Huffington, who I love, I follow her on all social media. She says failure is not the opposite of success, but a stepping stone to success. So again, we're not talking about eliminating fear. We're all going to still have it. It's learning those steps to push through it so that you can gain success in your life.
Shane brought it up, uh, really early on in this podcast, and he talked about learning about fear. So I want to talk about the physiological things that happen when we have fear, because I think when we understand what happens when our body, we can feel and sense those things, then we know, oh, fear is setting in. And now this is when I have to start doing different things, right? Like maybe doing some breath work or whatever it is. So the first thing that happened is the amygdala in your brain starts working overtime. So why would that even be a thing that we'd bring up? And I'll talk about that in just a second. But it sends a signal to your body's nervous system. Okay. So that amygdala sends a signal to your body's nervous system and says, start doing different things. So stress hormones, cortisol, and adrenaline are released into the body. And why is that important? Well, blood flows away from your heart to your limbs due to the fight or flight. This way, you could throw punches or run really fast if you had to get away from danger. So that's what's happening. So if all of your blood flow is leaving your heart, it's also leaving your brain. Okay. Right. And so now your body's going into this response that says, I literally have to fight. I might need to punch somebody, or I might need to start running really fast. And so all that blood goes to your legs and to your arms so that you can run really fast, or you can start to move your arms quickly. Okay. Well, some of your organs and parts of the body are getting turned up, some are shutting down, like I was mentioning, this blood flow. So the cerebral cortex, which is a part of the brain that is used for reasoning and judgment, actually becomes impaired because now the blood is flowing away from the brain to your outer limbs to fight or flight. And so I want you guys to be aware of what is going on physiologically in your body. Your reasoning is gone. So when fear is there, you start thinking about all of these things that are going that could happen, right? Like going down this water slide. Oh, I may die, I may fall off, I may, like, your brain's function is not functioning in its normal capacity. And so your thought processes are not thinking clearly. So I think that's one thing we need to know when fear sets in, is what is happening to our body physiologically. So fear can sometimes become a pleasure. And what I mean by that is, think of those that enjoy roller coasters or haunted houses, things like that. They enjoy becoming frightened by those different situations. So I think we can kind of treat those fear or the fears just the same way we do a roller coaster, right? Like, we're not afraid when I get on a roller coaster that I'm going to fall out or whatever. I love roller coasters, always have. I love haunted houses, always have. It's because I like the fear, I like that adrenaline pump in me, and I like the feeling that I get. So for some, that may be really pleasurable. For others, they may never go to a haunted house. But I think it's the idea, right? It's the idea that you can use those same kind of things that you use for other things that you're afraid of to overcome some of these other fears that we're talking about.
I think that's interesting that you brought up haunted houses. I was going to touch on it a little bit because we like to go to haunted houses. We like horror movies, just scary movies. In fact, one of our brothers has done a haunted house at his home for years, and it's fantastic. But we enjoy that, and it's because of that rush that we feel, whether it be a roller coaster or a haunted house or a scary movie. That some people like it, we like it, and so I think that's ultimately what we're talking about, is some almost encourage that fear of those type of things. And in this case, for haunted houses, we love inviting that fear into our lives. Others are like, "No, I'm not going to a haunted house because I don't want to," and that's okay. But we've talked about some sort of the negative mindset of what fear brings on. So we're standing on a stage and we're thinking, what if? What if the crowd doesn't like our message? What if they don't like our clothing and they mock us? But what if we use our brain in a positive way? We That's what we talk about all the time, is being positive. And instead of looking at fear in a negative way, what if we turn it around and we think about it in a positive mindset? We think about, we visualize the success. So we're on the stage and we're thinking, what if they love our message? What if they stand up at the end and they're applauding and everybody's crying because they have just been overcome with so much, that they feel it, that they feel our message? What if Jason goes on the water slide and he loves it? It's his favorite thing. So we change just before we're going to be afraid. We change our mindset to be a positive one, and we use that to our advantage. Everything that, there's this quote, and I couldn't find who it says, but it says, everything you want is on the other side of fear. And I believe that we could have not ever done this podcast, and the joy that is bringing to us right now, and the people we're connecting with, and the reach that we're gaining in the world, could have been on the other side of fear, right? We could have stopped at any point and said, no, we're not going to do this because we're afraid of something. But we just push through it. And all of the joy and the happiness and the success that we're seeing from this decision to push through fear, we're seeing it. It's on the other side of fear. So we're an example of that, of what we're talking about. That's what we're living right now. So I just wanted to share that with you.
I This has been a great podcast, I believe, and so I really hope that you guys get something out of this. But kind of the closing thing that I wanted to talk about is 5 ways to help us with fear, and one of those is going to be what Shane's already touched on. So I'm going to mention it again, but we're going to talk about a few of these. One is learn about fear. Take some time and learn about what fear is and how can it affect you, the physiological things, right, that are happening in your body. And so you can sense those and know, oh, I may not be thinking clearly, so my reasoning, maybe I should ask somebody else, about this particular way, right? Learn some proven ways others have used, right? Talk to somebody like Shane, like when in this water slide instance, right? Talk to Shane. Shane went down it. He didn't die, right? And so if he did it and he's still alive and be able to tell the tale, then there shouldn't be anything dangerous that I should be worried about, right? Learning some breathing techniques is the second one. The box method, we've talked about it. It's the 4-4-4-4 method. So it's inhale 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale 4 seconds, and hold for 4 seconds, and repeat. That'll actually help kind of calm your nervous system down. The third thing is practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is bringing you back to center, or grounding. I mentioned this in a previous podcast, but I wanted to talk about it again. So find a place to sit down without any distractions and focus on the 5-4-3-2-1 method, which is used oftentimes in, psychologists use this to help people with anxiety or stress. So it's 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And that could be an imaginative thing, right? Like I'm tasting, a lemon. We've used that in the past. The fourth thing is change the way you are using your brain. Thinking about when you're at a doctor's office, right? Think about how they ask about your pain levels, 1 through 10, right? 1 being no pain or no fear, and 10 being the worst you've ever had. Once you rate your fear, then you can think of a way to bring it closer to 1 or down a level, right? So if you're at a 10, maybe try to think about going to a 9 or an 8. What would that take? What would it take? The box breathing method? Would it take to learn different techniques? What is it that you know? Try the 5-4-3-2-1 method, something like that. So you're using your brain to kind of think, okay, so right now I'm fearful. I'm at a 7. Okay, how do I bring myself back down closer to a 1, or to where I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable? Okay, and then the last thing is use nature as your therapist. Okay, and what I mean by that is go for a walk. Nature is a great way to overcome some of those things you're afraid of. Think about the trees and the flowers, right? Think about them growing, the smell of fresh air. Take a walk. Maybe it's a walk with family. Maybe it's by yourself. Maybe you're in the mountains or by a stream or whatever it is. Listen to those sounds and use nature to kind of help calm you down. And this is kind of what I wanted to end on. And I hope that you really got something out of this episode. I think there's a lot of value in learning how to deal with fear and overcoming some of those things, because it's exactly true. Those things that you really want or desire could be on the other side of fear. And if you do that, it could be a whole new world open up to you that you were not even aware of. And you may find a lot of joy, which is really what this whole life is about, is finding joy and having joy in this journey.